Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Vector Automotive Challenge in Automation, the car company tycoon game. Today we are going to finish off the Vector sedan for the 1970s, and all we need to do is name it. And if you can see where my mouse is, I have picked a name, thanks to Caleb, who suggested that it should be called the Ascent, and I liked that name. I was slightly concerned that that name had already been used in the past for a car, but as far as I could tell, it never has. Perhaps a trim of a car, but never an actual car. And my mind got slightly confused with the Hyundai Accent. But no, this is the Vector Ascent, a car that is going to ascend us to greatness, a car that goes above and beyond what the other manufacturers are doing with their sedans. This does mean, however, that in our little timeline here, I believe the Quark name is going to go away. So this is replacing that in our model lineup. Not necessarily something new for our lineup, just something that hopefully reinvigorates our sedan market. Now, that kind of good backbone car is something that will let us do more interesting, or perhaps interesting is not the right word, but more perhaps experimental kind of cars. And now this could be considered experimental in its own right, but it's still pretty subdued. It's not too adventurous. It's just something that I think will help our company grow in this kind of market. So the year is now 1975, and we have a sporty looking company here that really wants to keep being sporty in an economy that is struggling in a gas crunch, and with new emissions restrictions coming up through the works. There's just everything in the automotive world trying to stop sports cars. And we want to continue that. We want to continue, well, we don't want to continue the stopping of sports cars. We want to continue making sports cars. So how do we do it? Well, obviously, we're not going to be able to use the more power, more better kind of mentality that has been specifically American sports cars in general for the past 20 years or so. The horsepower wars are behind us. It is now a much different looking field for your sports cars. We're even seeing the Japanese manufacturers now starting to have success. The European manufacturers starting to have success with small sports coupes. The key word there is small. We're using less weight to get the same performance. And I think what I want to try is to carry on some of the momentum I'm seeing from the small car manufacturer right now, Pantera. And they are doing a exotic-like body like you're seeing in the European market, with a large American Ford engine in it. I think that's a good concept, but maybe even that is too much still hung up on the mentality of more power, more better. Can we do something like that that is a little bit more practical, much more obtainable, and is something people can afford to drive and is good for this tough time that we're in? So if we look at our coupe bodies, not the sedan bodies, and in our 1975 researched vehicles, we will see that we have this body to choose from. There is actually a couple of these to choose from, if I can find it, and I hope I can. There it is. So this is the body. It is indeed somewhat like the Bricklin looks like, the Pantera looks like. It is very much so in that general style. So anything I do with this is going to be hard to separate it from those. But I certainly will try my best to make it a unique looking vehicle. I will see what I can do. But more than anything, what I want to do is to see if it's possible in 1975 to make a affordable, economical, high-performance mid-engine car that would be sellable to those who enjoyed their Corvettes, even their Camaros, their Mustangs, cars like that. People that bought those cars purely for the enjoyment of driving. Maybe we could try and steal some of those buyers with just the pure performance of this car without the huge high horsepower numbers. Now, because we're trying to do this on a platform that is not an exotic, we are not building an exotic car right now. We are building the car that everybody can afford, everybody in this market can afford, that we are trying to breach into here. So that means that we're going to take a traditional route with the chassis. Steel-bodied, steel material for the chassis. The engine placement will depend on the size requirements we need. I would prefer it to be transverse, but we will see if that is possible. Longitudinal would be how the Pantera works. It uses a large V8 right behind the seats and then goes backwards in a longitudinal manner. We're going to try the transverse setup right now. McPherson strut in the front, double wishbone in the rear, and like I said, it's just a steel body. Well, let me see what I can do as far as body morphing goes and as far as fixtures go. You know what? Sometimes bodies, they just work, and you just don't have any difficulty making a good-looking car, and this is one of them. I mean, I didn't do too much in the way of fixtures to do anything crazy. I think what I ended up with is a pretty good look for this body, but it was not difficult. This body just works. It looks good pretty much no matter what you do with it. There's still a decent amount of options, and I think other people might have different interpretations of it, but I am quite pleased. Got some body lines in there to try and break up a little bit of the wedgeness of it. Got an interesting front plow design on there that I think ended up looking pretty cool, and it does serve a purpose. I needed to get the lips on the front and the rear, and overall it's not too busy and it's not too complicated, and that's exactly how I want it to read, since I am going to be trying to market this as a affordable vehicle. And if I had gotten too crazy with fixtures and everything, it would look like a much more expensive vehicle, and that just wouldn't be thematically correct. So we shall move on. Let's see if this transverse rear-wheel drive setup will accept an engine, and this should be the easiest part of the build. Should be. Might be. Because we just built 2 new engines for the new Ascent, and I built those engines with the intent of using those in as many of our current model cars as possible. So let's load up one of those, probably the V6 to start with, and we'll see if that fits. And it looks like it will. Does not surprise me. Now, this engine was built with affordability in mind, and guess what? We're not going to change a darn thing on it. It is affordable, it fits, and I think it will work for this car. I have a feeling the lightweight nature of it will mean that 133 horsepower should do us wonders. Okay, so let's start working on some trim options here, and keep in mind that since this will be our base model, it will be in the sport, budget, and pony categories that we're trying to compete in. Into this category where we have large, full-sized coupes that pretty much dominate the market. So it's going to be an interesting uphill battle the whole way, unless my feelings are correct that this is the way we should be headed. So let's hope for that. Obviously, we need a little bit more gearing in there. Using a manual transmission with a 5-speed ratio box that will help our miles per gallon significantly. Might need to adjust the spacing on this significantly to get that wheel spin. Actually, the wheel spin is very good because it's, mid-engined. That is very good, so we can actually space it the other way. Everybody else is trying to space it, that second gear, very long, and we have the advantage of not needing to do that, so that's cool. Now, I don't need to do any kind of locked differential, easy for me to say, because the open works fine for this application. Has a lot of overdrive right now. That might be too much. Yeah, that helps our... Well, that went too far the other way. I may need to adjust the arrow. We'll see. In the tire department, I'm trying to keep it cheap here. I see a problem already, and I think when we solve this problem, then I knew we were going to have. When you build a mid-engine car in this game, you're going to have oversteer from the factory settings, so it's my job to try and tune that out of it. But with these medium compound tires that will be affordable, we don't have a whole lot of grip on hand, so let's see about maybe doing a staggered tire setup. It is helping enormously already. Could we go to 205s in the back? We could. So that'll be a 175 to 205 split. Let's go to 185, 205 split. Anything else is too much. But that definitely helps us out. Once we get this thing to understeer, it's no longer dangerous. It's no longer a hazard to people. And the people in the sport budget and pony category are really enjoying it. In the affordability, it's probably not doing too particularly great, but it's still getting very good scores, and if I can get them above 50%, I would be pleased. We'll see if that can happen. Brakes are doing okay at the moment. Where is the rear brakes line? Why don't I see it? Probably is it directly in line with this one? That could be the case. Yep, that was the case. Okay, so we can go with a slightly smaller rear brake on there, a little slightly smaller rotor. We went with solid discs front and rear, with drums in the rear. Okay, so that would have to be larger. And yeah, they just can't quite keep up, unfortunately. Would be great because of the cost savings, but it's just not quite enough. And we will probably need a little bit more of an aggressive pad in the front, because the definitely getting a little bit of outperformance there. So that is good. Usually you want these pad types to be the same, which means we could probably go for a smaller rotor. All right, well, it's all full circle, isn't it? Here in the aero department, got this cooling down pretty close to the minimum that we need to have good top speeds, and we really need to have good economy. We're sitting at 16.1 right now. Pretty good for the era, if I do say so myself. That is significantly better than the numbers you'll see in those big block 400 cubic inch V8s that we're shoving into cars right now to try and get them to perform with still only 100 horsepower. So I think that is a pretty good number. We'll see if we can get any better than that out of it. And would some rear downforce help this car? It did for a millisecond there. But then it starts to hurt the economy and things like that. Probably not necessary. We'll go up to 35, front and rear. Well, now we're starting to get oversteer. We don't want that. 99, nope, it's just not necessary. So those lips are all for show on this model. On the inside, I'm curious if going to basic interior would help our case. It does not. It makes it slightly more affordable, but people don't like it as much. So we'll stick with the standard. And when it comes to the interior accommodations, they really seem to like the standard 8-track. Okay, good to know. Power steering. Now, in my mind, we don't need power steering for this car with its weight ratio. But to the game, it might think that's important. And, well, it only drops 1 point off of the pony. Drops quite a bit off of sport budget. So we will indeed keep that. I went with advanced 70s safety. Advanced safety is something our company is kind of standardizing, if you will. But while we're standardizing that, let's see what standard safety does. Doesn't really help in any particular way. Again, it really does make the car more affordable. It makes it cheaper. But it's not... The cheapness of it is not going to offset the less desirability, I don't think. It's a gamble I'm willing to take. Handling-wise, this car is quite on the edge, is it not? Look at the way the graph is here on the steering. Just very, very close to the line, and then it understeers. It's a good setup, but it definitely has a little bit of that instability before it starts to understeer. Overall, it seems okay. I'm just hoping that it works out with our buyers. If they have handling issues with it, that could be a real issue. So we might tune just a little bit more understeer into it than maybe our more advanced models would have. This, again, would be our base model of this car. You know, it's interesting. I mentioned this when I was talking about the body design, but once again, this car really makes itself. It just falls together perfectly, which makes me think that we're really on a good path here. Like, we're really doing something that could be groundbreaking, and that is a very good thing. That makes me very happy. And with a drivability of 31, a sportiness of 29, comfort of 24, prestige of 18.5, that is probably the one area this car will be lacking in is prestige. However, it really does seem to make up for it in other categories and is pretty affordable as of right now. Total cost right now, $51.51. It's just an all-around pretty darn good car, if I do say so myself. So, where do we market this car? You know, what model is it replacing? Is it just something new for us? We had the concept car a few years ago, now almost a decade ago, where we made a mid-engine car, but we were marketing that towards the exotic audience. We had money to spare. We thought maybe we would take this car to Le Mans, you know, try and fight the GT40, things like that. That's no longer our goal here. This, I think, is really trying to tie into the pony car market, the muscle car market we've always been trying to get into, but have never really found our place. So what I'm going to do is consider this to be a vector combat car, but it will be a submodel of the combat. And what that is trying to do is to clue buyers in to the fact, I need to change those wheels, random side thought, clue our buyers into the thought that this car is to be considered on the same level as the combat, as a pony car, as a muscle car, because in its outright looks and presentation, it probably doesn't give buyers that impression. So that's why I want to go with that. So we're going to call it the combat, but we're going to call it the Combat Mutineer. And that name is because of the fact that we are basically we're rebelling against the standardized sports car. This is no longer the standard American sports car anymore. We're not going with the muscle car. We're not going with the pony car. We're not even going with the exotic large board engine, you know, big mid-engine exotic sports car. Nothing like that. It's something completely new and different. So I'm really interested. I can't wait to hear from you guys if you think that this was a missed opportunity by the American manufacturers. If you think I'm on to something here, if this was perhaps the answer to the death of the 70s sports car, could this have been a possibility? I really think it could have been, and I'm hoping we can pull this off. Now, we can't just present this car with only the base model to offer. Obviously, we need to try and capture everybody's attention, put this car into car shows, and really catch our maybe wealthier buyers' attention, and more than anything, make headlines in magazines. So let's see if we can make a higher performance version of this, but keep in the spirit of what we're trying to do. Okay, maybe I got a little bit ahead of myself there. Let's go over some of the base models, further details though. We're probably going to be selling this thing. Would like to make a little decent profit off of it, so we'll say $11,742. And look at the categories it does very well in. Family sport, pretty small family. Fun premium does very well in. Pony budget it does okay in. Not going to sell a whole lot there. It does pretty well in pony. Does very well in muscle. Sport budget in sport. Track budget. I think those would be particularly excelling in. And in light sport. So, and there's some other greens spattered around here. So there's a lot of different categories this car can sell to. And I think that is good. Now, if you're crazy like me, it would be a commuter car. I did, commute in cars very similar to this in the real world. But yeah, there is the categories it does well in. Around the test track, it has a top speed of 128 miles per hour. 2,300 pounds. That is pretty light and extremely light for the era. 16.2 quarter mile is extremely good. And at 8.30 to 60. Now these numbers are not what we saw in the 60s and are not what we saw out of some of the brute performance cars of the past decade or so. But we're staying on par. We're staying on the same page. We're just doing everything in a much different way. Just in case anybody's wondering, 136 around the airfield track. Alright, I think that pretty much covers the good old base model. Now let's take a look at making an R package. R package. So I'm going to set myself a restriction here. I cannot spend, the total cost of this car cannot be more than $6,000. So I'm going to try and make this thing as sporty as possible, but only increase the price by $900. Let's see what we can do with that. Now, in the engine department, I doubt we're going to be able to fit the V8 as much as I would love to. Would love to fit this engine. No, it is just too big. And well, it won't even show me in which ways it is too big. It is just that way too big. But our regular V6 engine was really not tuned to max potential, I don't believe. It was built to be as economical and cheap as possible. But I still think there was some wiggle room in there, so let's make a new variant. I forget to do that all the time and ruin my engines, but I did not forget today. So let's make a high-performance version of this engine. So we can do things like, I guess we have to pick the bottom end. That would be important. Let's stick with basically what we were doing before. I'm going to try these hyper-eutectic cast pistons. That would be pretty different for the era. I think that's a pretty early adaptation of that technology. And we'll not mess with the quality until we need to. Let's take a look at just how the engine does under base stats. Could we throw mechanical injection on there? I would love to do it. We'll see if we can afford it. We're going to stick with our unleaded fuel. Let's try to get 6,500 RPM out of it. That'd be a nice goal. Obviously, we can crank this up now. 2 tubular headers on there, the 2-way cat, dual exhaust, straight through, and a none. Off the bat, it makes 15 horsepower. Congratulations, everybody. You've just given birth to a lawnmower engine. Obviously, it's having a compression issue. The name of the game for this era is lower compression, to try and handle the new fuels, so that is just what we will do. I would rather not go this low. 8.5, that is very, very low. Also starting to have some bottom end issues. Looks like due to RPM. Okay, well, we'll see what we can do there. Now, it's not a huge issue because it's really falling on its face at those RPM anyway, so we'll reduce that to say 6,200, and most of those issues are going to go away. Well, let's put a performance intake on there. Now, this is good for 318 horsepower with the mechanical single intake mechanical injection, and I don't see that having any huge drawbacks to it. So let's do that, but let's increase this fuel mix basically as much as we can. Let's go 12.6. If I can hit that number. Okay, now let's do a little bit more of an aggressive cam on there. A 50 would be good. I think that's a good start, and that will give us more compression. Not a whole lot more, but it gives us more. And we're already up to 162 horsepower and 164 foot-pounds of torque. And a nice 112 performance index. I would like to compare that to the other engine. I think that would be a good thing to look into. Exhaust, have we too much of it? Probably so. There we go. Yep, we can lose some weight, lose some money, and gain some power. That's a good combination. Got her up to 170 and 174 foot-pounds by giving it a little timing, taking a little compression away, and 170, I think that's a good number. I think we crossed into a number that I am quite pleased with. Nope, that is the correct sized exhaust. I think we are all good here. I think this is going to be a pretty good engine combination for our car, and hopefully we didn't go too crazy with the cost on it. Not a bad sounding piece either. So let's move on to the trim. And let's see. Okay, no, we are in very good shape. Barely spent about $200 on total cost. We put about 10 more man hours into it, so obviously that's going to make the actual cost of the vehicle go up, but not in any major dramatic way that I was too worried about. So that is all good. But now we need to tune on the optimal power for the top speed, and the gearing is the word I was looking for. It's very late at night. I had this idea very late at night, so my brain might not be operating at 100%. I don't think it ever operates at 100%. But you know what I mean. But you can see already that the categories we had pinned before are looking a lot better, just due to having more power from the engine. Hopefully we can get even more than that. Let's go to sports compound on here. Now, just going to the stickier tires has made it oversteery. However, I would like to do larger tires if possible. 215, there we go. And then 195s in the front. We'll tune out the oversteer, hopefully with the handling, with the suspension of the car rather than the tires. I think I'm going to choose these wheels. How do those look on it? Not bad. What about the 5-star? Not a fan. Yeah, I think the multi-spokes are the one. Way to go. Brake-wise, it was doing very well before. 2 piston calipers in the front, and then a smaller rotor? Yeah, I guess. That almost seems a little wasteful, though, doesn't it? Yeah, I think we'll stick with the. I'll stick with the 1 pistons. It's working. We'll just go with more aggressive pads. I think I'm also going to spend some quality on the tires. That seems like an important thing to do. In the aero department, we still have the oversteer, obviously, but would a little bit of rear wing help us out any? Just, if nothing else, to get rid of a little bit of the lift in the back, I think would be quite advantageous. I think we need to get rid of the oversteer first, because if I try and get rid of the oversteer here with the downforce, it's fighting a losing battle from the beginning. Now, obviously, I need to give it more cooling so that we can cool that higher performance engine, and we'll put that in pretty good shape there. Let's also do semi-clad under there. How would that affect things for us? In these categories, it's not helping a whole lot, but we'll have to look at the other ones. On the interior of this one, this is where I really need to change the categories we're looking at here, because these are more of the budget categories, and we're kind of tuning this vehicle for something different. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's see, what's it doing the best in? It is doing the best in Fun Premium. It is doing pretty well in Muscle. Track Premium. Let's do Fun Premium and Muscle. Let's try and tune those in. Yeah, okay, so let's do that. And then we'll go back to the interior for now. And was the standard not as good? Indeed, yeah, the sport is better. And on the interior, yep, they like more features for that as well. More rear camber is probably going to help us out. Yes, it will. So what is the difference there on the crossover? We go from 120 and 106 to 109 and 125. So yeah, that's a big deal to have a car that is safe to drive. Definitely helps out the drivability and sportiness of it if people can actually drive the darn thing. Well, drats, now we're over our budget. 6106. What's with the repeating numbers on that? Strange coincidence. Let's see if we can't knock a little cost off here. I already had to go down to premium interior because the sport was just way too much. Let's see, standard 8 track. There's a good amount of money right there. So let's see. 5815. Hunky dory. We're all happy. In the market's on it now with a minor markup because we're not going to sell too many of these. We're not going to make too many of these. It does best in Fun Premium, Light Sport, and Sport Budget. Does okay in Sport, does okay Track Premium, Track Budget, Convertible Sport Budget, Super, Hyper, GT a little bit, Muscle Premium, Family Sport, and Family Sport Premium. Again, that seems a little odd. Again, very small family. It has a cone-sized family. Just me and a cat. Pony Budget and Pony. All categories we wanted to hit with this car. All pretty much knocking it out of the park. I am ecstatic with the way this is looking. I'm really curious to hear your guys' opinions on this. I want to know if you think this would have actually been a viable thing. I really, truly believe it could have been. And I really, truly think that the only time the American manufacturers ever tried this concept, they just didn't have the right goal for it. They didn't try and market it correctly. So, let me know. It's 1975. You gonna cross-shop this versus a Camaro? You gonna cross-shop this versus You know, the larger coupes, the Monte Carlos, the things like that, your regular sports cars. I don't know. Me personally, I would say yes, but I have a very skewed perspective on things. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. That is going to do it for today. I hope you've all enjoyed this random venture into mid-engine sports cars. I had a lot of fun with it, so I hope you did as well. I will see you next time here in Automation. Wait. Can't just end the episode without looking at the performance of this thing, can we? Well, we can. I totally did, but I'm coming back now to review it. Anyway, let's look at the test track. 137 miles per hour is now the top speed. Not mind-boggling, but still quite good. The quarter mile is down to the 15.1. That is pretty decent, but the 0 to 60 at a 6.8, that is spectacular. That is very, very good acceleration for this era. I think that would be something that the magazines would be all over and all about. Obviously, the weight distribution on this car, 34/65, makes it it's going to have some interesting handling characteristics. There's no getting around that. With a 104 and a 101 on the cornering Gs, extremely good. Going to be a very good handling car, but it still should be pretty drivable around town, and very good for the straight line acceleration that this kind of market, generally, that is the main thing people are looking for. Around the airfield test track, well, you know what, since I forgot, let's do the whole airfield test track. Ooh, buddy, she runs a little rich, doesn't she? Sounds good, though. Good sounding car, and I'm not a V6 fanboy, so if it sounds good enough for me, then it's probably good enough for about anybody. 131 around the test track there. Very good performing car. Really happy with how it came out. I mean it this time. This is going to be it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. See you next time.